When we're faced with feedback, what we often do is kind of push it off and hope it gets better and goes away. But it never does it? In fact, all we do is just open up a whole new feedback front of forgetfulness, because the longer the distance, the shorter the memory. And researchers have a name for this. They call it the forgetting curve. Have you heard of this? Forgetting curve? No? You probably have, you just forgot about it. Dad joke! Yeah! The forgetting curve is exactly what it sounds like, right? As soon as we learn new information, as soon as we process new experiences, there is a sudden and steep drop of information recall, almost 50% within the first 24 hours that we learn it. And over the next several days, it steadies and slows, but by the time a week goes by, we have forgotten almost 70% of what we've learned unless we actively recall it. Now, imagine the forgetting curve in the context of our everyday conversations with team members. How much time is going by between the time that you're talking about stuff and the time that it actually happens? Because the longer the distance, the shorter the memory. And if too much time goes by, then all you're left with is this horrible combination of what looks like a cage match and a scavenger hunt where two sides are pitted against each other, desperately trying to reconstruct and find their way around events that neither one can really remember and that both are desperately attempting to forget. It's one thing to forget. It's worse to say, just forget it, because that happens. Because there comes a certain point in time when the fear of feedback just turns to despair. You get one too many bad feedback encounters, one too many bad feedback associations, and eventually you just opt out. You give up. And while it's hard to put a price tag on that, I think it's in the range of $193 million. That's how much NASA spent on the Mars Climate Orbiter, a small little spacecraft about as long and wide as LeBron James. And it was a cute little spacecraft that was part of this larger mission to Mars. It was supposed to gather information about the climate, set up as a relay for other missions that would come after it. And in December of 1998, NASA launched the orbiter with great success. Everything was happening and going according to plan until it wasn't. 9 months after it launched, in September of 1999, the orbiter disappeared. All communication with the spacecraft stopped, and NASA declared the mission a failure. There was an after-action report, and in that report, NASA revealed something startling. The cause of the orbiter failure wasn't hardware, it was human. Two teams working on the navigation system for the orbiter were using different units of measure. One used SI units, the other non-SI units, and that deviation between metric and non-metric units produced the slightest change in the orbiter's path, probably causing it to crash somewhere in some crater, and proving yet again that bad things happen when Americans mess with the metric system. But here's what the report didn't say, and that I learned about from someone who was affiliated with the program later on. There were engineers on that team that noticed this discrepancy, were worried about their result, and tried passing that feedback on to other members of their team. That feedback got so rolled up in red tape, red, not magenta, that it just caused them to stop trying. They literally just stopped pushing the issue and opted out. And the result was a $193 million mistake. Toxic stress, time lapse, blame, shame, pain. This is the feedback of fear. But here's the good news. There is a feedback fix, a way forward. We can create a bolder, braver vision of feedback. We can challenge the status quo and create something that is so strong, so powerful, and allows us to never stop growing. A fearless feedback approach that looks out towards the future and not back at the past. Not feedback. Feed forward. Feed forward is the new fuel of feedback. It focuses on future possibilities and not just past failures. With Feed Forward, we can turn power into partnership, reports into relationships, actions into agency. We can take that fear and contain it. We can name it, and we can turn it into a cause for joy, because feedback looks back on a past that we can't change. Feed forward looks out on a future that we can. Feedback is about fear. Feed forward is about joy. Feedback is about what we do to others. Feed forward is what we do for them.